All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Thursday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week. Well, we went with Colin Cowherd last night. I wanted to take the time today to kind of dig a little bit further into the X's and O's and talk about some of the stuff that I learned from watching some more film this morning. As you guys, those of you guys who followed us over to Playback, we rewatched the fourth quarter last night. I dug into some other portions of the game a little deeper, specifically the run in the early second quarter as well. I wanted to dive into just how the Pacers pulled off that big win last night. And then after that, looking forward in the series, what we can expect as we move forward for both of these teams now that we only have a few games left in the matchup. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at _JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget our podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. Jackson's doing great work on our social media feeds, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Make sure you guys follow us there. And last but not least, if you want to get questions into our mailbags, remember we're doing them at the tail end of our live shows. So show up for the live show and then just drop your questions in the chat, and then we hit them in the mailbag at the tail end. We will definitely be doing a mailbag at the tail end of tomorrow night's show. All right, let's talk some basketball. So before we actually move into it, I figured this would be the perfect time for our Microsoft course correction segment, because we had two guys last night, in TJ McConnell and Ben Mathurin, that I think deserve a special spotlight for the work that they did off the bench in these specific runs that I think won the game for the Pacers. So welcome to Course Correction, brought to you by Microsoft. Just like star players and teams navigating performance hurdles, business decision makers today are under immense pressure to get things right. They must rise to the occasion, turning challenges into opportunities. Microsoft empowers these visionaries with AI solutions, simplified cloud and data management, and trustworthy, responsible AI. And when you're in the NBA, you have your own hurdles to face. In this segment, we will highlight the player every week that has risen to the occasion when his team needed him. Whatever challenge you're facing, Microsoft empowers you with the expertise to say, bring it on. This week's players of the week are TJ McConnell and Ben Mathurin, University of Arizona alums. For those of you guys who forget, I'm from Tucson, Arizona, still currently live there. Big Arizona fan here. I used to be a bigger fan of the U of A before, bigger fan of college basketball in general before I started working in this business. I was lamenting that to a buddy of mine at the gym the other day. Like, ever since I got into the NBA and it's become my profession, I have had way less time to watch college hoops, which has been something that's made me a little sad. Maybe I'll be able to find some more balance with that over the years. But I grew up, as I was growing up, the U of A was the team that I rooted for. It was, if you ask me who my favorite team was, it wasn't any NBA team. Like, the Suns didn't do a great job marketing down to Tucson, even though we were an hour and a half down the road. It was the University of Arizona. That was what we rooted for. It's a huge cultural thing here, just like it is in any other college town. For those of you guys who live in college towns, you know what it's like. And I was lucky to get to play with a lot of these guys that came through the system. TJ McConnell has always been one of my favorite players. I've told this story on the show before. It's been a very long time. But TJ and I played pickup with and against him at various points at the U of A. And my first time meeting TJ in person, I was this young, just asshole, for lack of a better word. And I was playing in a game against TJ and some U of A guys. And I was bringing this like crazy competitive energy to the game because I was like viewing it as an opportunity to try to like test myself, that sort of thing. And I was just being a dumb young basketball player. But I vividly remember in that environment, a lot of the guys kind of playing the too cool for school, like whatever, we're just out here messing around kind of thing. And there was one guy on the other team that had no desire to approach things that way and that wanted to win that game at all costs. And I saw the competitive fire in TJ's eyes in that game when we were playing against each other. And he was talking shit to me and all that kind of stuff. Totally was like an exposure to the fact that like TJ is one of the apex competitors that you'll meet. He is a guy that I always have thought that a guy who approaches a random pickup game with an insane amount of competitive energy, even though he is a pro, even though he is a guy that has played in the college level, at the overseas level, in the NBA level, like that to me is an indicator of a guy that has a competitive motor that is there regardless of surrounding circumstances. And I just remember, I remember being struck by TJ the first time I met him, just by how intense he was. And I do think that has been a huge driving force behind what has made him a 10-year NBA pro. and has just been one of my favorite players to root for over the years. But I've been fortunate to see a bunch of U of A guys come through Tucson, and it was obviously a lot of fun last night to watch TJ and Ben, two U of A alums, put a huge mark on an NBA Finals game. That the Pacers basically won that game with 2 runs. There was a 25-10 run in the early second quarter that took them from down 8 to up 7. And then there was a 23-11 run in the early fourth quarter that put them from down 5 to up 7. And those were really the stretches that swung this game back towards Indy. The early second quarter run was mostly TJ McConnell. Again, we've talked about this a lot in the series preview, but he has TJ is actually one of the better athletes in the league when it comes to getting straight line speed and changing direction at straight line speed. He can bring the ball up the floor with pace, and he just kind of sets it up for a strong right hand drive, and he counters it with a right to left crossover, and then he spins when he gets cut off, and he just brings a lot of downhill power in those drives, and it just makes him very, very difficult to guard. And there were a lot of plays there was one where he dropped off the ball to Pascal Siakam for an easy layup during that run, where he just was staring down Cason Wallace head to head and just got into the lane. And that ultimately is the thing that breaks down any defense, is the ability to beat your primary defender and to draw in help. And on this play, he beat Cason Wallace and drew in Alex Caruso, which opened up a little drop off to Pascal Siakam, and he got an easy layup. And there were a lot of opportunities for guys. He had a big transition drive where he drew a foul. He had another drive out of pick and roll where he beat Cason Wallace towards the baseline. He just was consistently getting past his man, which was making all of these positive trickle-down effects. And guys were getting open on cuts. I talked about Siakam. Ben Mathurin got open on a cut. Obi Toppin got open running his lane in transition on the left side of the floor. That was when TJ got one of his inbound steals. If you remember, he stole the inbound pass immediately after scoring. TJ was just all over the place in that early second quarter run and brought the life back into the arena after Oklahoma City threw a hell of a punch in the first quarter and left Indiana just a tiny bit shook at that point. But TJ dug him out of it and got him back into the game. And then on the other end of the floor, J-Dub took and missed a couple of tough mid-range pull-ups. The two-man game with Hartenstein and Chet, that was a too big look for the Thunder that didn't work in this game. Again, I talked about that after game one. The different looks that Oklahoma City has are more or less irrelevant to me because each one of them can succeed. It's just, are they going to do the job or are they not? And this was an example where the too big look didn't work. They switched the two-man game at the top of the key and forced Chet into a tough fadeaway that he missed. It was just in general a cold spell for Oklahoma City. Indiana jumped and took the lead there. And then in the early fourth quarter, it was Ben Mathurin. Again, a 23-11 run that took them from down 5 to put them up 7. Ben Mathurin, we talked about him before the series, is another one of those guys that has that size and athleticism to get to his spots against this Oklahoma City defense. I talked about this a little bit last night with Colin, and we talked about it on playback. But if you look at Nesmith is a very good athlete, but he doesn't handle the ball like TJ or Ben. Not close, right? And Nembhard is a great ball handler, but he's not anywhere near the athlete that TJ McConnell and Ben Mathurin are. And so TJ and Ben bring that combination of kind of apex athletic traits and also the ability to handle the basketball that brings a real problem for Oklahoma City to be able to handle. And I know TJ doesn't really have the reputation of being that type of athlete. I think he is. I think he's very big and strong and is a very straight line speed guy that can change direction. I think that's an elite athletic trait. And that is what is allowed those guys to be successful against a very, very good perimeter defense from Oklahoma City. But we discussed Ben before the series as a guy that could be a real scoring boost for this Pacers team, and he got a bunch of buckets in that early fourth quarter stretch. He drove into J-Dub's chest and spun off of him and got an and one floater. He had this ridiculous shot in drop coverage where he softly fed a left-handed layup up off the glass. That was just a remarkable piece of shot making. That's a shot that the vast majority of even NBA players are going to overcook off the glass and probably end up missing, and Ben Mathurin made it. He had a pull-up 3 versus drop coverage along the right side of the floor. He had several pull-up jump shots in the game, and if you watch him, he just gets such great lift. And that's really the thing for him. If he can just get to his spot and rise up, these Thunder players literally aren't big enough to really get a great contest on him there. And he was able to get some really good pull-up jump shot looks in this game. And then TJ had another stretch in that run where he had a driving layup where he ran like kind of a decoy ball screen on the left side and got Kaysen to think he was going to switch. Instead, he just hit the Jets with one of those right-handed drives and got a layup. Immediately stole the inbounds pass and got another layup. Like, those guys were just massive in this game. 10 points, 5 assists, and 5 steals for TJ McConnell. 27 points in an NBA Finals game on just 12 shots for Ben Mathurin. Just huge NBA Finals moments for those two guys. And if they win the title, obviously as a local Tucson guy, as an Arizona guy, it will be a game that I look back on very fondly. That's it for this week's course correction. Remember, Microsoft's AI solutions empower you to take bold steps and make informed decisions, sparking new ideas to help drive your business forward. With Microsoft as your trusted partner, you can navigate your journey with confidence, finding innovative solutions and reaching new possibilities. Visit Microsoft.com/challengers to learn more. The NBA Finals are here. This is your last chance to bet on the NBA until next season. And DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, is pulling out all the stops to make this a Finals to remember. One team will be crowned champ, and the other will be lost to history. Who you got winning it all? Put your hoops expertise to the test. All season long, DraftKings has been the go-to spot for NBA player props, and that doesn't stop now. Who's going to carry their team to the chip? Try placing a bet on your personal MVP to drop 30, 40, or maybe even over 50. Ready to place your own bet? Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, lock in your bets, and finish the season as a winner. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Don't miss your last chance to bet on the NBA this season. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HOOPS. That's HOOPS. That's code HOOPS for new customers to get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins when you bet $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. It's worth mentioning that in the fourth quarter, that during that run, their defense was incredible as well. The big thing that really started to have some effect was just overall ball denials. There was a possession where Nembhard had a quality denial of Shai on a sideline out of bounds where he was trying to get a post up, and because they didn't throw it to him, it ended up getting worked around to J-Dub for a miss. There were multiple plays where guys like got denied and they tried to back cut out of the denial, and then Hartenstein or someone else like threw a pass on a backdoor cut to try to get them open against the denial that led into turnovers. So like lots and lots of success from ball denials, lots and lots of success from just overall ball pressure. We're going to talk about it in a minute, but I thought Oklahoma City really looked fatigued down the stretch. Defense was a huge element of those fourth quarter runs as well. Now down the stretch, once again, in classic Pacers fashion, a little bit of everybody, right? Tyrese Haliburton, who all night long started just taking I thought he came out the first couple minutes a little passive, but hit the Jets there in the middle of that first quarter and just did a great job all night of just taking the conceded coverage-beating looks that he wasn't taking for the first 3 quarters of game 2. It's not on every possession. Sometimes they beat him over the top of the screen. He wasn't able to get some clean looks, but all throughout this series, again, in the drop coverage, he's had mildly contested pull-up jump shots coming off of ball screens and mildly contested floaters going downhill in ball screens, all against variations of drop coverage. Those shots have been there for him, and he just didn't take them for the first 3 quarters of game 2. Did a much better job tonight of taking them, and he was making them tonight. So not only was he keeping himself in a rhythm, but he was actually providing some real scoring pop for his team. But in the fourth quarter, hit a huge 3 at the top of the key that broke a tie that put them up by 3 late in the game. He had a beautiful skip pass and pick and roll that led to an Aaron Nesmith 3 in the right corner. Nesmith hit a couple of massive 3s in the second half of this game, despite having I talk all the time about just find a way to make a play when you're having a rough night. And Nesmith was getting cooked by J-Dub in ISO and in ball screens all night long. He was missing shots. It was like a really rough Nesmith game. And he just hit a couple of huge 3s late, and he got a couple of big stops on J-Dub late. And who the hell cares what happened before that? Pacers got the win, right? But really nice skip pass from Haliburton there. I thought he actually missed another one that could have gotten a Siakam 3 in the left corner where he forced the ball to Turner instead. But Haliburton did a really nice job down the stretch. Nembhard hit 2 huge jumpers. There was a play where TJ McConnell just straight up broke off SGA on an ISO, but he smoked the layup on the tap out that happened after. Nembhard hit a pretty tough little mid-range jump shot over Chet. He had another one in drop coverage that was a big shot in crunch time. Miles Turner, after having a brutally bad game for 3 quarters, just getting absolutely fried in his at-the-level coverage and missing shots all over the floor, he bullied Chet on a pocket pass where he caught the ball and just got downhill and then just bumped Chet off, and Chet went flying, and he got a little easy layup. He blocked Chet 3 times in the fourth quarter, twice at the rim, in another play at the three-point line. Once again, rough game for Miles for 3 quarters. Just find a way to make a play. Now we will remember Game 3 as a game where Miles Turner made huge plays and helped his team win, and no one's going to care about what happened in the first 3 quarters. It's such a these were such classic examples of, like, for you young basketball players out there, no matter what happens in the first quarter, no matter what happens in the second quarter, no matter what happens in the third, no matter what happens in the first half of the fourth quarter, like, just find a way to make a play and do something to put your team in position to win, and no one's going to give a shit about what happened during the remainder of that game. Obi Toppin, a huge sequence, a 2-way sequence where he had a tip dunk and then got a block on the other end. Tyrese was running a guard screen on the left side of the floor. He rejected the screen and got great dribble penetration. And when you get great dribble penetration, trickle-down effects, right? Lou Dort has to step over off of the weak side corner in low man help. Alex Caruso, who's guarding Toppin, has to drop and account for the corner. That opens up a runway for Obi Toppin to just shoot down that right wing lane line, and he just gets up and throws down a massive 2-handed dunk. They go down to the other end. Down the stretch, the Pacers were way, way better with their at-the-level coverages with their forwards. The at-the-level coverage with Turner doesn't work. It's causing all sorts of problems. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But with Siakam and Toppin in particular, they got multiple stops on switches in actions that looked to attack them with either J-Dub or Shai. And a big part of it was one of the problems they were having in those hedges or in those switches with those forwards is, one, either the on-ball guy would lose contain and Shai or J-Dub would just reject the screen, at which case it would be an automatic 4-on-3, or they would go off the screen and then just immediately split Toppin or split Siakam and get right downhill, and suddenly it'd be another 4-on-3. Those 4-on-3s have been a major issue for Indiana's defense over the course of the last 2 games. But in the fourth quarter, one of the things they were doing, the on-ball guy was more strongly overplaying towards the screen to make it so that Shai or J-Dub could not reject the screen, almost like an ice coverage where you're like forcing him to go a certain way, except for instead of in an ice coverage, you force the guard to go away from the screen. In this case, they were overplaying him to the screen. And then the guy, Siakam or Toppin, weren't getting split. Toppin was meeting him a little further back. Siakam, same thing, using his length to contest. After the tip dunk, Toppin switched on to J-Dub, slid his feet, kept his chest in front of that shoulder, met J-Dub at the rim, and swatted his ass. Huge play down the stretch of that game. And then their defense. We talked a little bit about it earlier, but after really struggling to guard Oklahoma City for basically 7 quarters in a row, they got the stops they needed in that fourth quarter. Again, Siakam and Toppin in those switches. Siakam locked up SGA and ISO twice. Once got him to pass out of a little step back 3 attempt. Another one where he contested a really nice contested ISO, like 18-footer off of the left elbow where he got a stop. He also had a really sharp closeout on Caruso on a play where he had a foot in the paint. Pass went out to Caruso. Caruso looked open. We talked about this in the Knicks series too, but Siakam has been really good with his like help and recover closeouts on the weak side. He got a really good closeout on Caruso that forced him to pass out of what looked like an open 3. They started to snuff out specific actions. We talked earlier about their at-the-level coverages with their forwards. We won't go any further into that, but they finally got a stop on that SGA back screen action. We talked about this in game 1. They had Shai back screen for Cason Wallace. Cason Wallace got a wide open layup because Nembhard didn't want to help off of SGA on screens. They ran it again early in the fourth quarter tonight for Chet. SGA screened for him. Nembhard didn't want to help. Chet got an easy layup out of it. They ran it again in crunch time, and finally the Pacers snuffed it out. Nembhard slid over and showed, while it was one of the bigs. I think it was Siakam. It might have been Turner. I think it was Turner, actually. Turner lingered for just a second on Shai, while Nembhard lingered for just a second showing on the Chet back cut, and then they recovered to each other's man, shut down the action. Again, that's what happens in these playoff series. As things progress, you see things enough times, you start to kind of snuff out the actions. You know what you're looking for, what you're waiting for, and it all of a sudden becomes a little bit more about getting one-on-one buckets or where you can create an advantage because the actions aren't working as well. And then in general, ball pressure and fatigue. You'll notice I've been pretty critical of the Turner at the level coverages, especially in this series, but I haven't been too worried about the ball pressure. There's been some downsides where they've given up dribble penetration, but the big difference between this team and Jaden McDaniels is when Jaden McDaniels would get beat, he's not as quick-footed to get back into the play. Nesmith, Nembhard, TJ, these guys are so quick-footed that even when they give up dribble penetration in their ball pressure, they can pressure from behind and rush the ball handler into making mistakes. I'm advocating with Turner for a deeper drop coverage. We'll talk about that when we get a little bit later into the show. But that is a specific issue that they were having with Minnesota, that Minnesota was having, where Shai would beat ball pressure and then he was just getting wherever he wanted on the floor. For the most part, Indy's been able to actually cause some issues with their dribble drive guys into rushing, into making mistakes and turning the basketball over. And there's a huge fatigue element to ball pressure and denials. And I thought Oklahoma City looked tired down the stretch. Shai in particular, hands on knees, not fighting for loose balls. Shai looked really tired down the stretch of this game, and that is a cumulative wear and tear effect that comes from that ball pressure. But once again, for the Pacers, everybody made plays, and that continues to be the story for this Pacers team. They have 7 guys averaging double figures for them in this series. Nobody's averaging 20, but 7 dudes are averaging at least 10, juxtaposed with a Thunder team that has 2 dudes averaging 20 and 5 dudes total averaging 10. They are just a cumulative force of nature. On any given night, it's somebody different doing something different, but they're just a remarkably balanced basketball team. They, as a team, forced a bunch of turnovers, blocked a bunch of shots. They continue to be one of my favorite playoff teams that I've ever watched. I actually thought it was funny. I saw a comment from you guys after last night's show where there are a lot of Pacers fans that think that I want the Thunder to win. That's not true. I think the Thunder are going to win. I picked them to win the series because you'd be foolish not to, given what we knew about the two teams coming in. But I find the Pacers to be a more likable basketball team than the Thunder. I find the Pacers to be a funner team to watch than the Thunder. Me and my basketball pick is not the same as what my basketball heart believes, so to speak. And I will flatly say that the Pacers are one of my favorite teams that I've ever watched. And I'll just freely admit I have been rooting for them in this series. It's just an authentic basketball feeling that I have when I'm watching this team. I'm watching them and I want them to win. So that is that I believe in the Thunder, and I have so much respect for the Thunder, and we're going to talk about the specific reasons why I think they still deserve to be favored in the series. But yeah, I'm sitting on the couch and I find myself rooting for the Pacers because they're just such an unbelievably likable basketball team that plays such a beautiful brand of basketball. You've got a couple of U of A guys on the roster. That's obviously going to appeal to me and my sentimentality a certain amount, right? So this is, I think they've been such an excellent showcase for the next generation of basketball fans to see what the best version of modern basketball looks like. And I've just really enjoyed watching them in this playoff run. On the Oklahoma City front, they look to be in really strong position for 3 quarters. After J-Dub hit that little sidestep 3 at the top of the key at the end of the third quarter that put them up 5, I thought they were going to pull that game out. It mostly came down to turnovers. Their half-court offensive rating wasn't good. I think it was a 93 if I remember correctly. But they were efficient in their specific actions. When they didn't turn the ball over, they got good looks. And I'm sure that's what Daigneault will be talking about when he watches the film and he talks to his guys. He's going to be like, look, when we don't turn the basketball over and we get the ball through their defense, we get quality looks. Oklahoma City shot the ball really well last night. That's the other thing too. If you're a Pacers fan, you're looking for another upside. You won game 1 despite the insane amount of turnovers. You won game 3 despite the fact that Oklahoma City shot substantially better than you did. There's a lot of upside there if you're a Pacers fan looking for some optimism looking forward in the series. But Oklahoma City did, when they didn't turn the ball over, they did get good looks. They were very efficient in pick and roll. In this entire series, Oklahoma City has been extremely, well, especially in game 2 and 3, I should say. Oklahoma City has been very, very efficient attacking in pick and roll. They have a lot of upside that they've been able to identify through 3 games. They just can't turn the ball over as much as they did. they did get away from their pet action. Like, it's funny, every team has to have a pet action that they trust in order to have success later in playoff series. And I think the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander ball screens where they're attacking Miles Turner in space are really, really good. And they're getting great stuff out of them. Even in the fourth quarter, they got a wide open three for Lou Dort out of the left corner out of that action. And they should have got another wide open three for Lou Dort, but Chet missed a read off of a short roll catch. But like, they consistently get 4-on-3s out of it because either the guy shows too high and Shai dumps it over the top and that guy gets a 4-on-3 on the roll, or Shai's just beating that at the level show from Turner because he's too slow to keep him in front in space, or Shai's rejecting the screen and now Turner's on the wrong side of the screen and he's getting 4-on-3 anyway. They get a lot of really good stuff out of that, but they didn't spam it enough. Like, classic example, the one that Dort missed. Like, Shai runs the ball screen with Chet, top of the key. They get a wide open three for Lou Dort out of it. So, like, textbook process. And Lou Dort's been shooting the shit out of the basketball in this series. Dort misses the three. So instead of being like, we ran good process, got a great shot, let's go back to it, they went right down the floor on the next possession. Shai didn't see the ball. They went through J-Dub. And it's like, I get it. Like, J-Dub was having success. He was attacking Nesmith and having some success. But, like, by far the most reliable action for the Thunder in the series has been Shai attacking Turner and ball screens at the level. They get great stuff out of it every single time. And I didn't think they ran it nearly enough in the fourth quarter. And that's the thing with young basketball players. They struggle to identify what's working and replicate it and identify what's not working and get away from it. And so I do think there was a little bit of an execution misstep in that fourth quarter. Looking forward in the series, again, as we talk about, as series progress, the low-hanging fruit stuff becomes harder and harder to come by, unless you're playing the Knicks and suddenly they play their worst transition defense and overall details game in Game 6. That's kind of unusual. But for the most part, teams kind of get a little better at identifying and staying in front of that stuff as the series progresses, and then actions get snuffed out, right? And so all of a sudden it becomes, what are your reliable, unguardable actions? What are the things you can run that are guaranteed to generate you a good shot in the half court because they don't have a good option to defend it? And I think Oklahoma City has a really reliable action that they can go to generate a good shot. And it's that Shai high ball screen with Miles Turner, where they're just consistently getting 4-on-3s out of it. I'm not sure Indy has established any one single action that reliable. It's been kind of different stuff in every different part of the game. It's very much like a flow and a rhythm that Indiana gets that involves everybody. So I still would make Oklahoma City a favorite to win the series at this point. But to be clear, we have officially entered into the Pacers have a great chance to win this series territory. That's where we're at now. We always talk about, like, you got to take it one game at a time, all the stuff that you hear in press conferences when teams are just saying all the meaningless platitudes that we hear. But it's true. It's one game at a time, right? You play again on Friday. If you beat the Thunder on Friday, you're in excellent position to win the series. It's 2 days off between every game from that point forward. You'll have 2 days off between Game 5 and Game 6 back in Indiana, and that city will be on fire, and you win one game in Game 6, suddenly you win the championship. So everything centers around Friday. Win Friday, the pathway is there for you to win the series. All of a sudden, I think I'd make you a favorite if you win on Friday. So it is incredibly achievable. You did the job. You did the job to this point. You stole home court advantage and you won one of your home games. It's win 2 home games and the trophy is yours. It is right there for the taking. But as it, that expression that, like, in baseball, that momentum is only as strong as your next night's starting pitcher. The point being, like, doesn't matter if you won 5 games in a row or 4 games in a row. It doesn't matter, what positive momentum you've built up. If the next dude who comes to town has like a 102 mile an hour 2-seamer that he keeps down in the zone and no one can hit, and he counters it with a slider that everyone's swinging out of their shoes, even though it lands, 18 inches outside of the strike zone. Like, if that is what's happening and your dudes are all swinging out of their shoes and they can't make contact, no one cares about your momentum. No one cares about what kind of, like vibe you've got going. in the dugout, right? Similarly, in the NBA, momentum is only as strong as, like, can you score against Oklahoma City's defense when they really, really tighten the screws? And as we saw in the third quarter in particular, they can tighten the screws on this Pacers team and cause problems for them. I think they only had 20 points in that quarter, and it was a lot of the same stuff we saw in game 2, like super intense closeouts that were kind of shaking Indiana's spot-up shooters. They went really cold. There's a level that Oklahoma City can get to athletically, and I believe that they will reach that point in game 4, understanding the desperation of the situation for the majority of that game. And so I think it's going to be a much, much tougher game to win. And in that setting, Oklahoma City has this really reliable action they can go to at the top of the key to get great shots. Not to mention just Shai ISO is a relatively reliable action in this matchup. And so it's going to be tough. That's the challenge. That game 4 is going to be the toughest game of the series by far for the Pacers. I absolutely think they can win it. I absolutely think they have a great chance to win this series. But at this point, I think Oklahoma City's defense at its ceiling has proven to be a little bit better than Indiana's. And I think they have a reliable action that they can go to. I think Oklahoma City is going to win game 4, win game 5, and then win one of the next 2 games. So I'm going to stick with Oklahoma City in 6 or 7, but the Pacers have done exactly what we hoped they would do. They have put themselves in a position to win this series, coming into the series despite it being one of the most substantial favorites in recent NBA history. So shout out to the Pacers for making this an entertaining series. One last note on that action. We talked about that high ball screen attacking Turner in space. I want to dive into this action just a tiny bit further for just a couple minutes, and then we'll be done. So why would you bring a big up to the level? You bring a big up to the level to dissuade a pull-up shooter. So, like, let's say you're playing Steph. You don't want him coming off of screens and shooting pull-up threes, so you need someone at the level that can kind of, like, take away that shot, right? Or 2, to take away the runway, right? So, like, athletic guards that are really good dribble drive guys, a lot of times you'll show at the level just so that they can't curl the screen and get going. They curl the screen and run into somebody before they can get their momentum. And so it, like, stops them from giving dribble penetration, right? Or 3, to blitz, get the ball out of their hands, right? But the problem that the Pacers are having in this action, and the reason why these Shai ball screens with Chet and Hartenstein that attack Turner in space have been so effective, is that Turner's going up to the level and he's not containing the ball. And Shai's getting past him, or the roll man's getting past him. The ball is getting past Turner almost every time when he gets up to the level. And so that literally defeats the purpose. That defeats the purpose unless you're consistently getting the ball out of Shai's hands. But Shai himself is dribbling past Turner much of the time. Like, there were a couple plays in the second half where they were more blitzy with Turner, and he was super aggressive, and he forced Shai to get rid of the basketball. That's fine. At the very least, you're forcing them to play 4-on-3 without Shai in the action. But, like, there's way too many examples of Turner coming up to the level and Shai just dribbling right around him. And so my thing is, keep pressuring him. But if Shai's going to get past him, if the ball's going to get past him no matter what, you might as well have him at the rim or closer to the rim. And so all I'm advocating for is just running a deeper drop coverage with Turner. Will that have its issues? Of course. Now all of a sudden he's going to have to deal with someone coming downhill at him. But at least he's got length to bother at the rim. Now you're going to concede a lot of pull-up mid-range jump shots in drop coverage around the elbows. Okay, but I'd rather give that up than some of the stuff they're getting out of these 4-on-3s, especially when Shai himself beats the at-the-level coverage. And so my thing is, like, don't bring Turner up to the level unless he can either contain the ball or force Shai to get rid of it. And he hasn't been able to do that in this series, so I would have him in more of a deeper drop, where at least you're making his length a factor at the rim. Because, again, like, that is the action they're going to have to find a way to guard if they're going to win this series. They're going to have to find a way to guard that SGA ball screen that attacks Miles Turner in space. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting me and supporting the show. We will be back tomorrow night after the final buzzer of Game 4 of the NBA Finals. I'm incredibly excited. It'll be just me that night, me and Jackson. We're breaking it down. We'll have a mailbag. We'll also head over to Playback and take questions and watch some film. Really looking forward to Game 4. I will see you guys then.